we kind of live in a generation where entitlement is more popular than sacrifice, right? And we kind of live in a, you can have it all society, but you know what? That's not true. You can't have it all.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I am back with Aby Rinella, and we are talking this week about affordable homeschooling. And Monday's episode was so much fun. We had a good time talking with each other and talked about a little bit about the heart, just kind of like the posture of your heart when it comes to being able to afford homeschooling. And Aby gave lots and lots of scripture. And man, some of that is just so convicting to listen to. Like, this is really what the Word of God says about trusting Him. And so we talked a little bit about how God doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. No, wait, how do we say that? God,
He doesn't call the equipped, He equips the called. That's right.
I feel like I'm saying that backwards, right?
No, you got it.
No, I got it right.
You did.
And so He, if He's calling you to homeschool, He is going to equip you with everything you need, including whatever resources you need, curriculum, whatever. He's going to provide with, for you, whatever you need. So trust Him to do that. So if you missed that episode, go back and listen. And we're going to talk more about affordable homeschooling today. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, BJU Press Homeschool. If you are looking for great homeschool curriculum, check out bjupresshomeschool.com. They will equip you for a successful homeschool journey, and they have crafted all of their curriculum to give you the tools that you need that are rooted in a solid biblical foundation. So check them out. They've got everything that you need for every grade, every age, every subject. bjupresshomeschool.com. All righty, Aby Rinella, we are back. So
here we go.
Yeah, here we go. We talked Monday at the end of the episode about what do we need? Like, what do we actually need to homeschool? And that was such a good conversation. You threw me for a loop because you were like, okay, if you only had 5 things that you could choose, what 5 things would you choose?
Yeah.
And so that was
that would be a fun one if people go on the Facebook page or something. I'm curious what other people would choose.
Yeah.
Other people might have other things, like I would choose this or that, but it's fun to think about.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It is fun to think about. So we talked about that. Let's talk about just sacrifice, because sometimes homeschooling comes with sacrifice. I mean, I think anything worth doing comes with some sort of sacrifice, right?
Yep.
So what are the things that we give up when we're home educating our kids? We've got them home with us. We want to disciple their hearts. What are some of the things that we need to be willing to give up and sacrifice?
Right. And you know what? Not everybody has to give up the same things, but we're kind of talking about to make homeschooling affordable, right? To make it doable. We're kind of talking to the mom that says, I wish I could homeschool, but I can't afford to.
Right.
And I always, like I said, we say, well, you can't afford not to. I mean, to say you can't afford to, I would say isn't an option. Like, if God calls you to do something, you get to say yes, right? You don't get to come up with why there should be a no.
Right.
But in that, there's going to be sacrifice. I mean, in anything that we do, there's going to be sacrifice, right? When you choose to get married, you're sacrificing, dating a different guy every day of the week.
Right.
When you choose to buy a house, you sacrifice calling the landlord if something breaks, right? There is give and take and sacrifice in everything. And we kind of live in a generation where entitlement is more popular than sacrifice, right? And we kind of live in a, you can have it all society, but you know what? That's not true. You can't have it all. We were never meant to have it all. We were meant to depend on the one that tells us what's really necessary, right? We're meant to depend on God, not have it all.
Yeah. So can I pause you right there? Because you talked about entitlement, and that goes back to our episode last week, our 3-part episode on school choices, that we often think we are entitled to this money. And if you missed that 3-part episode, go back and listen, because we really will help you understand why taking government money is not a good idea for homeschool families, even if it seems like we should be entitled to it. So we'll answer all of those questions there, but you just threw that in there. And I thought, oh, that's just, we feel like we should be entitled to having someone else provide what we need for our kids, because we pay our taxes.
And what really is God's job to provide for, right?
Yeah,
and I mean, this entitlement, it's an entitlement generation. We're entitled to all these things. And you know what? It never works out well. It's not, it changes the heart of what we're doing. And we talked about that on that last week's episode as well. But there has to be a sacrifice. There will be a cost. There will be. And so what will the cost be? The question is, are you willing to sacrifice relationships or your sanity or your lack of peace or your kids? Or are you willing to sacrifice God's best? Because those are sacrifices that if we choose to take the easy route often, or we choose to even say, I'm not doing this because I can't afford to, well, then you're going to sacrifice those things, right? You're going to sacrifice God's design for educating your kid, right? But then then we can also choose to say, I'm going to do this God's way. And there will be sacrifice that comes with that too. It's not just because we say, sign me up for God's way, everything's going to be easy and I'm going to have everything, handed over to me. That's not really true. In fact, the Bible talks way more about sacrificing and picking up our crosses and laying ourselves down and laying our own desires down and losing our lives to gain it, right? Like that's kind of the essence of the New Testament in a sense, right? Rarely, never actually, do you read about having it all, and we're entitled to have it all. So that's just kind of one of the things. We get 18 years with our kids. You don't get any of that back. There's no do-overs. And so when you make the commitment to homeschool, and again, I'm kind of talking to those parents that say, I can't afford to do this anymore, or I don't know how I can afford to do this. I am telling you right now, you can. Here are some things that you might have to sacrifice. Hold on tight, but I promise it's going to be okay. You might have to sacrifice annual out-of-state vacations. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay. Because if you calculate how much you spend on your annual vacations, then I can guarantee you're going to put a lot of that towards that I can't afford to homeschool, right? It's going to help. And what I say is build a life that you don't need a vacation from. Build a life. I often think, and I'm not saying vacations are bad. If you can afford all of it and you can vacation, great. I'm just saying these are some areas that our family has realized if we get rid of a few of these things, we can afford these other things, right?
Yeah.
And if you build a life, when people vacation, there's a lot of reasons. It's fun. It's a cool experience. But sometimes our life is so intensely go, go, go. We're never together. Everybody's going a different direction. It's a time to come together and do something together. But when you homeschool, you can build that into your life, right? You can build into your life that time together. So you might have to sacrifice that. You might have to sacrifice dinners out. Right? You just might have to sacrifice going out to eat and cooking at home instead. You might have to sacrifice brand new cars for every member of your family, or the latest camper. Or how about you might have to sacrifice salon nails and do your nails at home. I mean, these are just things that when I hear moms come up to me and they're doing all of these things and then they say, I can't afford to homeschool. I want to say, are you sure you can't? Are you sure you can't? You might even get to go, this is kind of trendy, but you might get to go thrift store shopping instead of shopping at the local boutique. I mean, there are ways to do that because when we sacrifice things, I'm going to tell you what we gain instead. When you're willing to sacrifice the things that are optional for the thing that is necessary, you're telling your kids this: you're worth all of these things, more than all of these things. You are worth it to us. You are worth us giving up these things that we would probably love, but you're worth it. Our freedom to raise you up in the Lord isn't it to answer his call. That's worth it. And we even talked about when we say no to government money, we're saying yes to the freedom to raise our kids the way we were called. So there's always going to be a no when you say yes, and there's always going to be a yes when you say no. So think about the things that you can sacrifice. Make a list of your monthly costs and say, what can I cut out? Can I cut out the $5 latte that I get every day? And then that's however much a week. Do the math. You're a homeschool mom. Yeah. And you could buy curriculum with that, right?
Yeah. There's almost always a way. And again, we're going to talk about some free ways that you can homeschool as well. But there is almost always a way that you can cut back on some things.
I agree.
And have the things that you really want. So it's all about prioritizing what's most important to you.
There it is. That's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head, prioritize. And I also say if you're having older kids and they're getting ready to launch, one thing I would tell parents to do is set them up with the end goal in mind. And, my husband and I were told when we were young and just got married, do not build your life around two incomes, even though you have two incomes now. Maybe don't build your life around that so that when it's time to bring mom home and homeschool, you've already built your life on a budget, on a smaller budget, or even if you're still going to have two incomes, just tell your kids, you don't need $5 million in school debt, college debt, right? Because that's kind of setting you up to later say, man, I don't know if we can homeschool because I'm paying back my student loans. Yeah. Or man, we've built our life so big before we had kids, our mortgage and our cars and all these things that now that we want to come home and homeschool our kids, we've kind of built ourselves out of doing that. And that's not to say that the Lord can't fix that. He did in my life. I mean, when we had kids, there was no way we could financially afford to do, but God made a way. So God will always make a way, but it would be wise to give your kids that wise counsel.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. We want to thank all our sponsors for making this show possible. BJU Press Homeschool, CTC Math, and Apologia. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. Visit the show notes for links to these great companies and thank them for supporting the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. All right, Aby, let's talk specifically about some tips that we can give for actually making homeschool affordable.
Okay, that's why people are here.
That's why they're here. Yeah, they're like, stop talking about all the other stuff.
Yes.
Let's give them actual practical advice on how they can afford to homeschool.
Right. So homeschool is an extension of home, right? It's not a separate thing. You always have a handy way of saying that. It's basically just an extension of life, of your already existing home. So let's look at like ways you can make your home affordable. Because if you make your home affordable, then your homeschool is going to be affordable. So I always suggest, managing your money, make a budget, learn how to make a budget, teach your kids how to make a budget. Don't spend more than you have, right? Proverbs 22:7 says a borrower is a slave to the lender. So I would avoid debt, right? Because debt is just going to be payments that you have to make towards something that isn't there that you could be using for homeschool. So set yourself up financially well. And here's a great place to learn how to do that. The Bible. God's word has so much wisdom on money.
That.
I know. God says so much in his word about how to manage money, how to, be a steward of your money, how to not get into debt, how to save, all those different things. I would say change your habits and become a saver. I remember when I was in college, we would get our tax returns back and everybody would get together and be like, what are you going to do with it? Okay, new mountain bike, new this, new that. And it was like this money that just showed up on your front door and you got to buy all these cool things. And then I remember when we were early and young married, it was the same thing, like, oh, we got our tax return back. Let's, what are we going to buy? Something cool and fun. And now that we're older and wiser, we do more like, okay, we got a tax return or a bonus. Let's talk about a bonus, right?
Sure.
A job bonus. Say you get a Christmas bonus and it used to be, Christmas bonus. Let's go buy, new whatevers. What if instead you immediately took that money, if you have a tax return or if you get a bonus and you immediately put it into a savings account for maybe curriculum next year? That's a great way of doing it. And then now your curriculum is paid for. And so again, what did you say? It's prioritizing, right?
Yeah.
That's what you said earlier. If your priority is your home and homeschooling, then that's where you're going to put your money. That's where you're going to, that's where you're going to save. This is a fun one I used to do with another homeschool mom. And we talked about in the first episode, surround yourself with people that are on the same plane as you, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Because you're going to encourage each other. You're going to be able to support each other in making it affordable. We would do no spend months. And we had to do it together because we needed accountability. But we would start on the first and we'd say, okay, the only things that we can buy are groceries. And you can't go to a grocery store like Walmart that also has cute pants. Well, does Walmart have cute pants? I don't know if they do.
Sometimes. But
you can't be like, oh, this is part of my grocery budget. It is literally just food to feed your family.
Yeah.
And then, and so it was a no spend month. And what we do is we'd write a list of everything that we wanted to click on Amazon because it's so easy to click on Amazon.
Right.
And I would write it down and then I'd have to wait to the end of that 30 days. And then I'd go back and look at that list and I'm like, I don't even remember what that thing was that I would have bought had I not done a no spend month.
Yeah.
And then when we broke our no spend month together, we went into a wait a week to buy rule. So if you want to buy something, you have to write it down and wait a week. Okay. And that just was a practical tip to help because like this morning, for example, I couldn't find some clipboards and I know I have them in the house, right? But I was like, I don't want to get out of this chair and go, I'm just click, bought some clipboards on Amazon. And I'm like, now I'm going to have 7,000 clipboards because I'm going to find the old clipboards. But if you do the wait a week to buy, it will save you so much money.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. I had a friend who years ago, she used to have her shopping cart. And I forget how many items it was, but by the time she was done shopping, I mean, this was back in the day before you could shop online and have someone shop for you. But and you could even do this if you're online shopping too, but she would have her shopping cart and at the very end, she would put back, I think it was like 4 or 5 items. Like that was her rule every time she went grocery shopping.
I love that.
And it was great because you have those impulse buys where, you see those Oreos on the end cap.
Absolutely.
And you're like, oh, they weren't on your list, but oh man, those sound so good.
I love that idea.
She would save money by putting stuff back every time she went grocery shopping. And I just thought, that's so wise. It's so smart.
Yeah. And these are fun things to do. Like, I don't know if you're like me, but I like to do these with other friends so that I can like call my friend and be like, oh my gosh, it's week 1. And I wanted to buy this so bad, and then my friend took it to the next level and she'd be like, okay, I'm only buying fresh fruits and veg. Like I have to use, so she would like shop her pantry. She'd like eliminate all the food in her house because sometimes we hoard food too.
Right.
So she'd work through all of her food. Right. And then I tried to do it with another friend and she was this friend. Don't find this friend. Right before the week before we did it, she went and bought everything she could imagine.
Oh no.
She was like, I'm going to pre-shop and spend so much money.
That's hilarious.
Like, you're a terrible accountability partner. But when you said shopping, food, groceries, let's talk about that. That is a great way to budget and save money because the truth is food is way more expensive than curriculum. You are going to spend more feeding your family than you are going to on any curriculum. So cook once, eat twice. That's kind of a tip and trick to tell people. It'll save you money. Meal plan. I promise Yvette hates this, but it does save money. It really does. Yeah. Cutting your eating out really saves money. Yeah. Because you can cook for a week and what it would cost. Well, at least where I live. To eat out one night, you could cook for a week because dining out is so expensive. Very
expensive restaurants.
Well, we kind of live in a resort.
You live in bougie town, so
yeah, we do. Have a rotating list so that you can basically just stock your pantry, and then you just rotate through some of the same meals. Because when I get a cute magazine and I'm like, oh, I want to make that meal, and there's like 5 ingredients I've never heard of that I'll never use again, but I go spend $20 on it. Yeah, that's not a good way to do it. So just have your basic meals and rotate through them. So those are just. Those are the food ways. And I've got some other practical household ways, but I think getting your food budget under is helpful.
Let's talk about other practical household ways to save money. But real quick, I want to say we were talking on Monday about influencers and, seeing stuff on social media. And one of the things that I have found with my girls, because I've got 2 teenage girls, is that we got to the point where we were spending so much money and still I'm really trying to cut back on this, so much money on beauty products, and now we have to get this face cleaner, and because now we have to get this special brush because the Instagram girls said that we. And I'm like, and I keep telling my girls, I'm like, since I was a teenager, I have used Dove body bar soap for my face, and it's worked great for me. I use it to take off my makeup. I use it in the shower. Like I use it for everything, and it works great. And I've never had problems with my skin. And it's cheap. You don't need to buy the $15 container of, face cleanser. No. It just gets so expensive. And so that's another way.
And those people on there, they are convincing. It's like, well, I have to have that mascara. So
and that's because they're getting paid for it.
Yeah, that's true. We have to remember that. I think the only answer is to just shut that off or find the dupes. Have you ever, I love to do this. Look up whatever it is that you think you want and then type in dupe for it, and you can get like the $2 elf version as opposed to the, $50 clearance version. So beauty products are a doozy.
They're expensive, and they have gone up so drastically in the last couple of years.
Oh man.
So it's kind of crazy. I think because they're getting those teenage girls.
Yeah, they are.
And even boys, I think sometimes. And they're like, oh they're going to buy it anyway. So
or us old ladies who are like, that's going to get rid of my wrinkles? What?
Right. Dove soap. Everybody use Dove.
Okay, there it is.
And
Dove.
I'm not even getting paid to say that. Maybe we need to get a sponsorship with Dove.
There you go.
We're not going to do that.
So here's some other practical, before we dive into curriculum, next one, but household stuff. Cut out the extras, right? Do you need, just ask yourself, do you need a car for every person plus an extra car, right? Just think, how many cars do we actually need? Or how about this? TV. We have not had cable or whatever it is that you can watch TV live or however that works ever in our marriage. Yeah. Now we have other things like Amazon Prime, which I don't know if I should promote that, but there are ways you can watch a lot of free TV nowadays. You guys, a lot of free TV. The library. So we're big fans of like BBC and PB, like all those British, not by we, I mean, everybody but my husband and son, they're anti, but the girls and I are, and you can go to the library and get all of those masterpiece theaters. The library has a lot of great shows. Yeah. Okay. So you could also read. You could read instead of watch TV. There is an option. Look at ways of lowering your phone bill. Look at ways of lowering activities. I know a lot of homeschool families, instead of the kids being in every activity, you get to pick one activity this year, one per kid.
Yeah.
And it's okay. You guys, it is okay to tell your kids no. Mm-hmm. It is okay to say you get to pick one sport this semester. Chances are your kid is not going to be a world famous athlete in that anyway, so you're not ruining their lives. Right. It's okay to say pick one extracurricular, especially those of you with 6 kids. That's still 6 extracurriculars you're paying for.
Right.
It's okay to limit those things. This is another thing that comes with that, that give and take sacrifice. Mm-hmm. When you say everybody only gets one activity, or and starting at 10 years old or whatever, because your 3-year-old doesn't need to take professional art lessons, this is what you're going to gain. You're going to gain more peace, more calm. You're going to get back to the basics, because you're not going to be running every which way every day, running yourself ragged. So there's a gain from that. We talked about vacations. Believe it or not, you are not going to die if you don't take an expensive vacation. You'll be okay. How about Christmas and birthday gifts? This is a really excellent way that homeschool parents can capitalize and make things affordable. Instead of just buying stuff, think about giving that activity. Hey, art lessons. That's your Christmas gift. You get art lessons for a whole year. Yeah. Right? Or, guitar lessons. Or how about a big box? One year, my son, he was playing baseball, and the baseball gear was expensive. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, how about at Christmas, we give him a big box with all the bats, the balls, the backpack, all this stuff. We were going to have to buy it anyway. Right. And so we package it up and we make it a really fun gift that would last all year. So think through your gifts with intentionality. When grandparents want to give a gift, think through that with intentionality. And then lastly, I want to say, when it comes to living an affordable life, cheaper is not always better. Sometimes we need to buy quality things to pass down. If you have 6 kids, then invest in the more expensive pair of pants so that it can make its way all the way through 6 kids. Or invest in sometimes people think affordable means cheap. Right. And you end up, my mother-in-law is the queen of the dollar store. And I think she pays twice as much as I do, because she will have to go back to the dollar store and buy it 800 times because it keeps breaking. Where if she would have just bought the name brand thing from the start, right? Like her Ziploc bags. You need 17 of those Ziploc bags to hold the thing because they're so cheap. So cheaper isn't always better. Yes. Sometimes it is good to just invest in, the more expensive bike, because it's going to get handed down 5 kids or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to go back really quickly to, you're talking about if our kids are getting involved in different things like sports and maybe art lessons, piano lessons, music lessons, things like that. Right. As they get older, and I'm not saying we did this with our kids. I'm just saying if this works for your family, and every family is different, you could have your kids work to help pay for those lessons, because that gives them ownership. Amen. I mean, we decided, years ago, that we would never buy a car for our girls. Like, if they were going to have a car, we will help them, but we will not buy them a car, because we wanted them to take the responsibility of owning the car, because then they take better care of it. Yeah. But then they're learning responsibility, and there's so many things that go along with that. So it's okay. And I don't mean they have to go out and get a full-time job, but it's okay for you to say, hey, these piano lessons cost, $60 a month. How about if you pay for 20, we'll pay for 40, and maybe you can babysit to help pay for that $20 a month. It doesn't have to be extreme, but giving them that ownership so that they really do understand that it comes with a price tag.
And the truth is, it's not just okay. It is so good for your kid. It's actually, I think it's crucial, because these kids that are handed everything all the time, they don't understand the value of things. They don't have, like you said, ownership. They're not learning money management. It's amazing when you tell your kid when they want something, well, you can pitch in half, how all of a sudden they actually maybe don't want it as much, right? The thing that they had to have, they no longer have to have.
Oh, yes.
Right. Yes. And one of those too is when your kids get to the age where they're done growing, which I think is never with a teenage boy, but maybe some point with a teenage girl. Our kind of rule is this: we buy you the basic clothes, right? We buy the basics. If you want anything extra, like the fancy trendy shoes, then you can buy those. Right. And when you're at a certain age where you're done growing, we have built you your wardrobe, and it will fit you now for an eternity. And anything extra, you will have to buy yourself. And you guys, it's good. It is so good for kids to do that, because then when they get into their 20s, they're not there's the word we used, entitled, spoiled kids. It teaches them to also prioritize. We said we need to prioritize. Well, we are also called to teach our kids to prioritize. So what really matters? Do you want the piano lessons or do you want the new Converse shoes? I'm not promoting Converse, but they're expensive. I'm not. Do you want the piano lessons or do you want the new shoes? And they are going to have to make that decision. And that's so good for them. And it saves mom and dad money.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, we are out of time. Tomorrow, we're going to come back and we are going to talk specifically about academics and how to make academics affordable. And that's going to be fun. We've got lots of fun resources for you to talk about. Abby, thank you for being back with me again today. We always have so much fun together. And I hope you guys have fun listening. I know you do because we hear from you. and you tell us that you like to hear Abby and I together. We have a blast together. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being on the other side of this microphone with us. We love you guys. You can go to our website, schoolhouserocked.com. Find everything you need there. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and share this podcast with your friends. Stay tuned to the very end to hear what's coming up next. And we will see you back here tomorrow. Bye.
A mom said to me one time, "Aren't you worried about sheltering your children?" And I said to her, "We care more about sheltering tomato plants in the culture right now than we do about our precious children." And so if someone wants to accuse me of sheltering my children, my answer is always absolutely yes. I will shelter my child until I know my child can stand up against the elements of the culture so that they can grow to maturity. And we slowly begin to remove the shelter from around them as we see that they are mature and that they understand the battle lines around them and can engage the culture from a position of strength rather than weakness.
This is kind of the easy part. Like curriculum is kind of, when in light of all the other things we just talked about, like food and all that, curriculum is not, people think that's the thing, right? That's the expensive thing. And it's like, actually, when I look at like everything that we do, like that's the cheapest thing. You can use dried beans instead of buying the manipulatives. Like you can get creative and you don't have to, I struggled with that for years. I'm like, well, no, they said I have to have this, right? But then I'm like, okay, if I couldn't have that, how could I create this in my own home, right? And there's so many creative ways. And that is one good thing about the internet. You could probably Google something like that. And I guarantee a mom somewhere, homeschool moms are creative. A mom somewhere has come up with it, right? She's come up with something like that and she might share. But like the beans versus manipulatives, I'm dying when I see people buy all these really like $75 for a box of manipulatives. And I'm like, I can get a bag of dried beans for a lot cheaper than that. My kids can count them just as well. I feel like I talk so fast, like cramming all this in.
Oh, no, you're doing great. No,
Are you
never
sure?
talk
I'm like,
fast. Yeah. No, it's
like
perfect.
A fire hydrant.
I have this stupid hair that keeps like flipping in front of my face and I keep
I think
doing
it's
this.
Beautiful. You're